Hi, I'm Dan Clark of the Safety Brief. This is where we talk about health and safety hazards in today's demanding industrial and construction work sites. Let's train employees about lockout and tagout systems. Maintenance workers have dangerous jobs. They've got to crawl around on their bellies inside machinery to repair things, and there's always a risk that someone will come along and start the piece of equipment without knowing that there's somebody inside. And this is true whether the risk is for shock and electrocution, for crushing, or any other kind of hazard. In order to minimize this risk, the Lockout-Tagout system was developed. Basically, this is a system for stopping machinery that's under inspection or repair from being turned back on. This lockout-tagout accomplishes this both by physically restraining the controls of a machine when possible and by visually alerting other employees to the work being done by a colored tagging system. We'll be learning about the basics of the lockout-tagout system itself along the way, but right now we're focusing primarily on how to most effectively train your workers to understand and adhere to the system. Let's take a look at the basics. The first and easiest step in any training program is simply telling the employees what you want them to know. And here's the very basic information about lockout-tagout. If they are the one conducting the maintenance, this is what they need to do. Number one, know that before starting any maintenance project where the activity of the machine or system could hurt somebody, they should first go to the control panel for the machine and use a locking device so that nobody can turn it on. In some cases, it may be a ring that fits around the button or dial to stop it from being pushed or turned. Other cases, it might mean turning off the fuse in the breaker box and putting a padlock on the box to stop anybody from turning it back on. Number two, they need to attach a brightly colored tag that will direct attention to their locking device. Now, this tag should stand out so that other workers will look at it and read it. And that maintenance worker who puts the tag there must write something on it. The information like who placed the tag, what they're doing, and how long the maintenance is expected to last. Number three, workers should also know that if this project is going to go across multiple hours or days, every once in a while they should check on the tag to make sure that it's still in place. If work runs over the initially allotted downtime, the maintenance employees should update that tag information, because if coworkers see that work was scheduled to end 4 hours ago, they just might assume that somebody forgot to remove the tag and that they can safely start the machine back up. Not good. Now let's move on to the machine operators and non-maintenance workers. Your employees should be trained to always be looking for a locking and tagging device before starting up a machine, especially if they know that maintenance was scheduled for the near future. You should also train workers to also carefully inspect the details of a lockout tag and understand what's going on. If they're confused or concerned about why maintenance is being done, they should get to a supervisor before making any decisions or actions on their own. Speaking of which, employees should know to never remove a lockout tag if they themselves did not place it there. Even when the listed time period on the tag is passed, this rule stands. Now, getting your training to stick. While the old tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them adage does speak to the power of repetition, it isn't necessarily the key to making your training stick. Here are a few things that you can do to make sure that employees actually absorb the information you give them and then turn around and change their behaviors in the way you need them to. Number one, make it personal. People don't care about things they perceive as not affecting them. That's just how we are. So because of this, effective training will work in examples that hit home. Maybe you've had an accident before, noticed a close call, or can simply show scenarios in which something could go terribly wrong during maintenance in your own workplace. Sometimes it can be hard to relate to a guy on videotape talking about someone who lost his finger in the 1980s, so make sure your examples make sense and are easy to relate to. This can be helpful if you're being asked to carry out training by somebody else as well. If you want employees to sincerely care about an issue, then you need to come off as you yourself thinking it's important. Number two, make it different. Don't require employees to stare at a screen or a piece of paper for 3 hours. Human brains get bored and tune out long before 3 or 4 hours of the same thing. When they get to this point, nobody is learning anything. Let employees work through possible reasons for a lockout-tagout system, but you are guiding the outcomes. Think about role-playing and having workers actually go through the actions of placing a lockout-tagout device. Many people learn better when the training is tangible or hands-on. In fact, most people remember something they did better than something they just read or said aloud. Well, that's a wrap on Lockout-Tagout Systems. Come back and join us again for more tips and techniques on how to stay safety compliant in today's ever-changing landscape of safety requirements. I'm Dan Clark of The Safety Brief, sponsored by Creative Safety Supply. See the website at creativesafetysupply.com.